Hello and welcome to the Thread to Mend podcast. My name is Taylor and I'm coming to you from Baltimore, Maryland, and this is a podcast about all things fiber related. It is March 20th in 2018 and I'm here in my dining room. It's raining and it's cold. But I am wearing today a finished object. It is Caitlin Hunter's Tegna t-shirt, sweater, short sleeve sweater. So I will just show this off for a moment. I won't go into the details of how the pattern is constructed because it is a paid for pattern, which you can find on RAVELRY, I'm sure. And it is it is a drop sleeve construction, but you can see that like my drop sleeveness is very subtle, and that was because I was playing a game of yarn chicken. Anytime you're knitting with a little less yarn than you think you need, you wanna? She just wants a treat. Then you're playing yarn chicken, because you know who will meet their end. So there is a bit of lace in the bottom, and I didn't gauge swatch, even though the instructions specifically ask you to, which I kind of went into why I didn't do that, because I knew I had very, very little yarn compared to what is recommended for this project. I bought 2 skeins instead of investing in a third that I knew I would use little of. So I just bought 2. And I think that the knitting blocked out really well. I noticed that when I was wearing it and like testing it, when I stretched it out, I really liked the way that it looked. And I think it's because it neutralized these purl rows. So if or when I knit this pattern again, I think I'm going to omit these purl areas to make it just a little more or less, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm making it more or less of, but I don't know, flat, maybe a little more flat. And it kind of fits more like a fitted shirt than a boxy tee. And I kept trying on this project along the way, and I was totally okay with how it fit. I was a little nervous that the armpits would be tight, and so I intentionally knit at least 6 extra rows, either along the front or the back. I think it was the front of the 2 shoulder sides. I just knit straight, flat, back and forth, like 6 extra rows on each side. Hey, you want up here? Come here. This is Starship Enterprise. She's happy to join us today. So that's my Tegna tee. I'm really happy with it. I knit it in the Fiber Company's Cumbria fingering yarn. It is, I don't have the tag in front of me, but it is wool with a little bit of mohair. And I know that there's a particular breed of wool that it is with, and then it has a blend of 2 other fibers. I know mohair is one of them. Let me go grab that tag really quick. Okay. So this yarn is made in Peru. Actually, it is only 10% mohair and 90% wool, and it comes in 100 gram skeins. The colorway that I knit this in is Helvelian. It's that green color. I ended up buying this yarn on yarn.com. So it does say that this is a lustrous blend of Masham wool. I might be saying that wrong, but it's spelled M-A-S-H-A-M. Wool, merino, and mohair. So it is a wool blend of wools and mohair. I did block this out. I'm trying to like stretch it out because I was afraid it would be a little tight. It fits like a t-shirt, and so you know most of my sweaters I prefer a little bit of give underneath the armpit. But I finished this project with not a lot of yarn left over. I think that if I were to go back and I was weighing my yarn ball each row and kind of adding up the grams to determine like how many more rows I should knit of the sleeves. And I could have knit the sleeves like 1 or 2 rows longer, but I didn't want to get to the last bind off and be an inch short. So I was a little conservative with like how many rows am I pushing this project. And I could have knit it even shorter. Like it is a crop tee, but this hits below my navel, way below my navel. My navel's here. This is where it sits. So I'm glad that it is less cropped because I can wear it with regular jeans and not feel like I have to pull out my very few high-waisted garments just to wear this item. I do feel like I can wear this shirt with almost anything. It is kind of just big enough to fit over my metamorphic dress and not be completely awkward. But the metamorphic dress does have a lot of fabric right here at the kind of right above the solar plexus, right beneath the sternum, above the navel, where, I don't know, I hope it doesn't kind of create weird shapes, but that is that, and I'm happy with it. I wore this the other day, and I moved a lot. I forgot to, there were a lot more ends to weave in than I anticipated. I guess just because of the shoulder construction, I broke off, and then, yeah, so I forgot to weave in a couple ends still, but I feel like I can move freely in it, even though it fits smaller. I kept checking my gauge and comparing the gauge, and as soon as I felt like I thought it would work, I didn't worry so much about it not being exactly as it was designed, as long as it fit me, and I didn't run out of yarn. So I think that it's hard for me to ever want to buy 3 skeins of fingering weight yarn and not make a full long sleeve garment, especially after this winter, because it's nearing the end of March and it's still freezing and cold, and I was anticipating kind of the last frost date to be sooner rather than later, and so I'm thinking like any garment I make, I want to have sleeves. Of course I say before spring and summer. By the end of winter, of course, that is stuck in my head. But, you know, if I'm buying 3 skeins of yarn, that will make a smaller cropped long sleeve sweater or a t-shirt, which may or may not get as much wear. So I'm excited to find out how often I feel that I'm able to wear this garment in the spring and the summer. I know a lot of people ask, like, wool, isn't that warm? And my experience so far, just the other day when I was wearing this, is that it is sweat wicking. So as long as I don't feel overheated, it's not itchy and uncomfortable. But in moments where you are overheated, I totally understand like wanting to take off all the wool. And Maryland does get rather hot and humid in the summertime, and even in the spring. So it's possible that a wool t-shirt will work for several weeks or months out of the year in some climates that are maybe drier. I'm guessing. I mean, also it has that sweat wicking ability. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm keeping an open mind. I think I want to say that I'll knit this garment again because it was a joy to construct. It went really fast. It felt like it went really fast. And I'm just apprehensive to invest like 3 whole skeins to make a shirt. Of course, I'm not wearing the shirt as it was designed in its form. So if I bought those 3 skeins, I might be more happy with how it feels and fits in more seasons, if that makes sense. Okay, we'll bring that to a close. This is the Tegna tea. I bought some stuff, and I'm going to show it to you. I'm a sucker for like email sales and things like that. But I got an email from Wool about them discontinuing some colors, and I think they were 30% off. And I treated myself to a skein of yarn and a little bit of fiber. So this is not that, but this is a skein of yarn I've had in my stash for more than a few years now. It's French press knits. They're no longer dyeing yarn, but they were dyeing yarn, I think based out of Maryland. And I bought this at the Wool Workshop years and years ago. It is a kind of delicate lavender-ish gray with tiny speckles of blue and gold, very subtle speckling. There was a shawl knit on display for this trunk show, and I fell in love with that shawl, and I bought the yarn to make that shawl, and I was such an inexperienced knitter at the time that I accidentally picked up a worsted weight skein to knit a fingering weight skein shawl. So I knew I couldn't make that thing, so one project that I really love to knit, making it kind of gets boring towards the end, but I really like wearing this garment and I like making it for other people, is Andrea Mowry's Modern Mucklucks pattern. I'll insert a photo of that pattern here. And I thought, because this is superwash, maybe it'll wear really well. I've previously knit this pattern 3 times. 2 of the times I used Cascade 220, 2 skeins each from my stash, and I wore through my pair in less than a year. I wore holes into the heels, and because I just didn't feel like I had felted those mucklucks. They were too big when I knit them, and so I felted them to shrink them down, and they became like a little ill-fitting because of that over time, because I shrunk them on accident a second time, but they still fit my feet. So when they developed holes, I didn't want to mend them because the amount of that they had felted just became a little less comfortable than I desired. So I ended up chucking that pair. My husband still has a pair that I've made him, which are not felted, maybe slightly, just a little bit. I think I might have actually put them in the washing machine on cold, and that slight agitation with water was enough to kind of just tighten up the stitches and give it a nice fabric without it being like a smaller size. And then I've knit the 3rd pair using my hand spun, which is like has so much give and so bouncy. And so I'm excited to kind of knit this same garment with a superwash wool, something with less elasticity than non-superwash or hand spun, to use up the skein, because I have a single skein of worsted weight yarn that is superwash yarn in my stash, and because this is like an MCN, it's really soft and it's really bouncy. Like it's some of the it's almost silky too. It's like, it's bouncy and it kind of springs off itself in a super washy way. So it has give, but it doesn't have the same handle as a non-superwash yarn. So I wanted to knit this with another yarn similar, and this wool skein came without a tag, so I'm going off of memory, but this was a skein of worsted weight yarn, and I think that it's the wash. So it's an organic fiber, meaning that the fiber is raised and prepared organically using, I'm assuming, like non-petroleum based chemicals to strip the lanolin from the fiber, and the dyeing process too. So this has a very similar plied construction. It's very soft and bouncy like that one. It's a little toothier than the superwash, and it's this kind of, it's a sunshine yellow. I would call it a sunshine yellow only if someone is not familiar with like rider weight yellow. I consider this now rider weight yellow. And I really like yellow and gray. I feel like this is like very flat, and this is very delicate and intense. It's so that they might in juxtaposition, like when they're really together, might look really cool, or it might look strangely odd. I'm optimistic that I'm going to like it. I'm not sure which color is going to hold dominance in the chevron design. I haven't chosen yet which one I want to do that with. So this is a project planned in the future. I like to have different projects on different size needles to give my hands a little bit of a break. I find that bigger gauged needles and yarn projects exhaust my wrists and my hands a little quicker. So, and it's nice to switch it up all the time. So right now I began a fingering weight project on size 3s. And so rather than relying on my other sock projects to occupy my I like having a few projects on the needles, and I like them to all be a little different. So one, I want to be very basic and stockinette, which is typically my sock projects, because I'm new to socks. I'm knitting vanilla socks. But right now, my sweater project is very stockinette heavy because I haven't reached the yoke. I just cast this on Saturday morning. Saturday morning I cast on this project, and I knit the cuff over the weekend while I was in a workshop, and that night after the workshop was done, I knit the beginning of the sleeve. And if you've never constructed a sweater before, anytime you're knitting a sweater from the bottom up, you're typically knitting the sleeves also from the bottom up, and knitting a sleeve is not unlike knitting a sock. In fact, it's much easier. So there are aspects of knitting larger garments that are more simple than smaller garments, which I think is just awesome. That's why knitting is so great, because there's so many different ways to do all the things. There's so much to practice and learn. So this is just the beginning. I'm not quite hitting gauge, and I think that if I use the recommended needles, I would be on gauge, but I don't own them. I think that this project, this is the Ola sweater from Ella Gordon. OLA is how it's spelled. I'll insert a photo of this pattern here. And I'm a little bit bigger than the suggested gauge, so I'm thinking of knitting the smaller. I'm always an extra small or small. I'm actually right in the middle, so if I'm knitting an extra small on a slightly bigger gauge, I think it will fit well. I hope that the proportions aren't totally off. I was looking at the projects completed on Ravelry, and I noticed that the yoke sizes varied on everyone's sweaters. Some of the yokes appeared larger than others, and some of them appeared smaller than others, and I don't know if that was relative to the size they knit, but it seemed like all the sizes were relatively close to the same. They weren't like comparing extra large to extra small, or I wasn't comparing grossly different sizes. I don't think. I mean, I can only assume unless I open up every project and view all the details, and that way I'm no longer looking at them comparatively, like side by side. But I really liked the look of the yokes that appeared a little larger. So I knew that I wanted to knit it on slightly larger needles to give it a more prominent appearance rather than something that's just kind of small around the chest. So I hope that this gamble I'm taking is not the wrong one to take. I have been trying this on. I fearlessly just let all my stitches kind of slip off my 9-inch circular, and I often try on the sleeve. And honestly, I think that this sleeve is fitting really well so far. A lot of my other sweaters are tighter in the forearms, and I have strong forearms, but they're still scrawny. I think that my 9-inch circular knitting is a little tighter than my 24 or 30-inch circular needle knitting. So I think the fact that I'm knitting a little bit bigger of a gauge on the sleeves is going to be okay. I might decide to go down a needle size when I get to the body if it seems like out of control large. I'm off by like less than a whole stitch in my measurements. It's like 0.75 stitches larger than it should be, but you know, that adds up. Like, you repeat that many inches around and that's going to change the shape of your garment. So yeah, so I'm knitting the cuffs and the bottom and the collar, I'm assuming, on size 2s, and then I'm switching to 3s, and I plan to knit the yoke on a 4 because color work can kind of bunch in and get a little tight, and I want it to be nice and large and beautiful on the top. So I don't own 1.5 circulars, 9-inch circulars, which I prefer, or larger circulars. I don't even have a 1.5 in DPNs, which I wouldn't enjoy knitting if I did. I don't really enjoy knitting on DPNs or double pointed needles. So I didn't have the 1.5 or the 2.5 to knit this on the suggested needle, so I just used what I had, and I actually started on a different size on accident and was like, oh no. Let me move to those. So that is stored in my Charlie Harper project bag made by Knitting Nelly. These are for sale on Etsy on the Little Lion Heads Etsy page. I love this project bag. It's just so adorable and simple. You can just throw everything in one little sack and then toss it into whatever bag you're carrying and not worry about things getting a mess or askew. I bought one other thing from Wool in that transaction, and I invested in about a pound of organic combed top. This is undyed, and I think that she sells it, if my memory is correct, in 2-ounce portions at a very affordable price. And I bought, I think, 8 times 2 ounces. So I bought 16 ounces of fiber. I knew that 16 ounces would be enough to spin and make something out of, maybe a shawl or a couple skeins of sock yarn. I noticed that, like, with spinning, even if I buy a whole pound of fiber, which I've done in the past, and to spin for a sweater, it's not enough. You need a little more than that. Maybe because my spinning is not super, at the time, at least wasn't really consistent, and so it might be a little thick, a little thin, and I might get less yardage. That might be why, but I just went with 16 ounces because it felt like a nice round number. And I'm going to experiment with acid dyeing on this and kind of, I think that I might do my own just funky, weird, I don't know what I'm doing dye job, and funky, weird, I don't know what I'm doing spin, and just see what happens as like a uncontrolled creative experiment. I also made a purchase at Woolin & Co. Yeah. So I bought this from Woolin & Company. I'm going to go through each product one at a time. The thing that I love the most, I have not yet used, but the thing I'm most excited about is the handcrafted wool wash. So this is a wool wash that is in a bar form. And I bought the Neroli and Shea Blossom. It's sort of floral but semi-citrus, so it's clean and it's feminine, but it's not over the top anything at all. It does kind of smell like quintessential flowery soap, I guess. I would have bought more. I should have bought more wool wash because this was just divine. I mean, it smells so good, and I can't wait to use it. This arrived in the mail, I think, the day after I finished my Tegna tea. So when I decide to wash this, I'll probably use this first, even though I have other wool washes open. One thing I really like about this product is that it doesn't have plastic packaging, which every time I throw away like a bottle, I'm like, I don't want to reuse you, but I don't want to let go of you. I don't know. I don't like creating garbage that I can't. This I could shred and put it in my compost bin, and it's still a part of my life, and I don't feel like I am subjecting my my existence onto the rest of the planet by requiring a dumping ground for the things I decide I don't want anymore. I mean, I might be getting like way too, but yeah, I just, plastics, we all know this. We all know that plastic is like the bane of our existence. And so that was one reason I was willing to pay for a beautifully designed and marketed product. There are a few more soap bars that I bought. The first one was a little bit more affordable. And so I just went for it, even though I know that once I get this in the shower or at the sink, like, I'm going to hate that it's the shape of a cupcake. I think these little cupcake soaps would make amazing little like birthday gifts for a friend. I think in retrospect, while I was making this purchase, I wish and it just smelled so good. Like, I wanted to like hold it and I plan to use this one. This is the watermelon little cupcake soap. But this was $5 and it would make like a really sweet like birthday gift for anyone that that like, birthdays just like pop up out of nowhere. Sometimes it's your coworker, sometimes it's your friend. And I think in retrospect, I should have like bought a few more of these just to have on hand to be like, here you go. And I could have done that with this one, but I was just being selfish and I wanted it for myself. I bought 2 other soaps. I know that this is a fiber podcast, but at most fiber festivals, you will see soap vendors, and I always buy my soaps. I mean, I say always, but right now I'm showing you that I bought more soaps. But I always buy my like supply, my like yearly or 6-month supply of soap at fiber festivals. And I mean, this brand markets themselves as like a knitting fiber lover, so how could I not like get into this? The first one is Sandalwood Cedar. I love this. I could live inside of this. I love this. It's clean. It's not overly masculine. It's not overly earthy. I love this. Sandalwood and cedar. And the other one is lemon and eucalyptus. It's divine, but it also smells like very eucalyptus, which is something that you might find in other brands. This is a small bar of soap for $7. I don't typically buy soap this expensive. But I was just like in a mood. I was like in a spending mood or something, and I just went for it. Because if you're spending money to ship one thing, it's your decision making shifts to like what you're willing to buy. And there were so many good smelling or good sounding soaps that I just went with my favorites, which is typically sandalwood or like piney smells, and like lemon and eucalyptus also. There's one last thing I got that I actually used, and it's the Soothe Herbal Body Balm. Here's the packaging. So it advertises on the front side lavender, chamomile, and rose. And on the back, the ingredients tell you that there's lavender, chamomile, rose, and calendula infused sweet almond oil. Lanolin is the second ingredient. And then there's mango butter, vitamin E, and essential oils of lavender, geranium, liang liang, and cedarwood, and patchouli. So what sold me on this was the patchouli. the cedarwood, and the calendula. So calendula is known for being a deep, penetrating, herbal salve. Like, often you'll see that salves have calendula infused in an oil because it is really nourishing and regenerating to the skin, but on like a deep level. Like, it almost like repairs the structure of your skin from the bottom layer up. And so if you deal with like dry, cracked hands, or like I get kind of like cracked cuticles, and cuticle kind of gets dry and cracks. It's like so great for just nourishing like super dry skin. And I think it's so weird. I have like a love-hate relationship with this balm so far. When I put it on the first time and when I put it on right now, my first thought is, I hate the way this smells. There's a lot going on. I mean, you have lavender, chamomile, and rose. Lavender, chamomile, rose, calendula, which does have a smell typically. And then geranium, ylang ylang, cedarwood, and patchouli. That's like 7 different heavy contenders into a single fragrance. And I was with my friend Carrie Ann, and I was like, hey, let me know what you think of this balm. I'm not sure if I want to keep it. And she was like, yeah, I really don't like the patchouli. And I'm like, yeah, I really don't like the rose. And so I feel like this is almost like but the thing is, I do love the balm. Like, I love that it has calendula. I love that it has lanolin, vitamin E, the almond oil quality. It's like the first ingredient. It does make it kind of a shinier balm, and you kind of feel it on your hand, and then like a minute later, it all absorbs really well, and it doesn't feel greasy. So the balm is great, but I feel like this is like an attempt, I'm not assuming the intentions of the maker. I'm just saying that this is almost a great example of one thing trying to please everybody. Like the people that love rose, it's gonna please them. The people that love patchouli, you'd think it'll please them, but it doesn't really please either of them because it has so much stuff. And the smell, the fragrance, it's like kind of like reminds me of like a leather bag. But you know how sometimes fragrances will be described as like leather? It's not that either. It's kind of smoky. It's so weird. And like I said, at first hated it. And right now I hate it. But like 5 minutes from now, I'm going to really like the way it smells. It's so fucking weird. I'm sorry that F-bomb came out, but it's strange. I don't know. I think I don't like it, and then I like it. I don't know. It's strange. Maybe because it kind of goes away, but... So I'm like semi... I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I would be doing a bad job selling this by being critical of its composition. But I think that if this soothing balm were chamomile and patchouli and cedarwood, and I don't know, I feel like less is more when it comes to essential oil blends. I think more than 4 things is like too many things. And I think that when I was buying it online, I saw lavender, chamomile, rose, and I thought, no, I don't want that. But I do want soothe. I want something soothing. I don't want something warming or cooling. I just want something soothing. And so when I saw the ingredients had cedarwood and patchouli, I thought, yes. And I should have known that I don't ever love rose fragrance things. Rose is just not my game. But there's not a lot of hand balms that have lanolin, and I like that a lot. It really soaks in super well. So I realized that this is more about soap than fiber, but I have not been fibering a lot. Like I said, I spent my whole weekend in a workshop. It was a Katona yoga workshop at the Yoga Works studio here at the Midtown location, close to where I live, and it was so great to practice with those ladies. I feel like the experience of that workshop reminded me a lot of my old teacher, who I went through 2 different teacher trainings with, in that they were not afraid to dive in really deep into the posture and adjust people dramatically, and not afraid to like put a strap here, put your foot there, and really move someone outside of their comfort zone. And I feel like as a teacher, that's something I struggle with a lot. Like, I don't want to offend people, and sometimes just being who I am offends people. Not that I say or do anything that I think is particularly offensive, but it can be like triggering to a mental state to some people. I don't know, maybe I invite this with my own insecurity, but like, I feel, this is just my feeling, that people don't always take me seriously, and I don't take myself seriously. I don't step in and completely shift someone into a different space because I'm not sure that they trust someone who doesn't look like them physically to bring their bodies where their bodies could be. And maybe if I tried, they would. I'm just scared to offend. And so I kind of keep my distance and I let people, move with the way that they feel like moving. And I always invite feeling into it. And one thing that I really gained from this workshop in terms of yoga posture is that we should observe our feelings and know that they're there, but not let our feelings guide us. Meaning, the posture in itself has a particular geometry, and it's the geometry of the pose that is going to dive really deep into what is, those feelings and emotions. One thing that I've been teaching a lot about, or kind of acknowledging recently in classes, is that our thoughts, if they're not expressed, can kind of become our emotions, right? The only difference between our thoughts and our emotions is that our emotions are our thinking manifest physiologically, right? That adrenaline in the blood, all that stuff. So our thinking, if it's not expressed and kind of, brought out of us into clarity, into our consciousness, it can express itself physiologically and quickly drop down into the unconscious. And so that unconscious expression is manifest not only physiologically through your blood or whatever, but also now like in your body. You might hold your structure of your body differently because of those, feelings and emotions. That might seem a little woo-woo, but we all have archetypes of like what a sad and depressed person, how they hold themselves, or what how a really confident person holds themselves. And I think that this theory of yoga, or theory of posture in general, is that our own particular posture allows us to embody ourselves fully. And that means not only our conscious thinking, but also bringing the unconscious to light, kind of bringing together the light, which is what is conscious and manifest, that we're aware of, and then the things that we're not aware of, that are way deep in the corners of our body, bringing them together and finding that like third path forward, right? So yeah, I feel like this, and I am hearing people on the social media talking about chirons, and I'm like, what is a chiron? And I know my like natal chart, but I'm not a student of astrology. I just take from it what I can when I can. But it was like literally before I started recording this, I was reading about chirons and how it's sort of, your your wounded healer, your wounded, like your wounds, like those things that are like really deep, that maybe you're not even aware of. Before I was reading about that, I was listening to, I think it was on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, talking about these marketing people who are saying, we want to use advertising to pull from people their greatest hopes and fears and bring that into their awareness through whatever it is that we're pushing. And it's true. This is a weapon that is used against us. And so our hopes and our fears are weapons that are used against us in media and marketing. And in order to demilitarize, what's the term I'm looking for? Like, take those weapons away from people who are attempting to exhibit control over our hearts or our minds. We have to confront those things within ourselves and own them and be aware of them, bring them out of the darkness into the light, into our conscious state of awareness, and release that control that they are gripping to have over us. So the reason I'm kind of like going into this ramble is that another thing that I really enjoy practicing is tarot. I don't do like professional readings. I don't consider myself an expert by any means, but it is a tool of awareness that I use. So, posture is a tool of awareness of the completely physical self. Tarot for me is a tool of awareness for my mental and emotional self. So we're getting into a different realm of mental and emotional states. And so I lately I've been pulling a card, and I'll always, it's not magic, and it is magic. It's not like the card or the deck is magic in itself. I'm not telling you that some inorganic or unconscious object, as many people view this to be, as being something other than what it is. It's exactly what it is. It's a deck of cards. But I think that the magic in using this deck lays in your intention. So when you're holding it, you're asking something. You're asking it to provide you a message. So I'll often frame the inquiry as, where, if I make this decision, where will it lead? Mary Schock has a podcast called Tarot Electric. She's also from Baltimore, and she has a lot of great episodes that gives more information about tarot, like why we don't ask yes and no questions and things like that. But I was inquiring with my deck, and I think, if I'm going to since I'm putting this out there, I'll just get personal. I was in this workshop this weekend with a lot of amazing and inspiring people. And I knew that I don't often put myself out there to be alongside amazing, inspiring people because I'm afraid I don't know the password. And I don't have a lot of friends, and so maybe people don't want to be my friend. Or they're just social insecurity. I'm an introverted person, and so I don't feed off of being around people all the time. And so when I put myself out there and I'm around people, I'm just not sure of myself, maybe, or I'm just not sure. I don't know. I try not to think too much. I try to just observe my thinking and notice what's true and what's not true, and not go deep into fear and anxiety. Just it was different. It was different for me to spend time with people who are so supportive and so loving, and I was like, wow, this is great. I love this. So I pulled a deck, and I was like, where will building this friendship lead? Where will building these friendships lead me? What's going to come of this? Right? Because that's my anxiety, is I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be rejected. I don't know if I'm going to, be part of a crew, right? So I didn't know. I was just where's this going? And I normally shuffle the deck. I'll split it in two, and I'll shuffle it like cards, and then I'll always split. So I'll always split the deck and then flip one over. That's just my thing. And while I was doing this, I mean, it's really important, I guess, like I was saying, the magic is sort of in having that single point of focus of your inquiry while handling the deck. And while I was doing it, I think what I did was I split the deck in half, and I just like turned the top half over, and that was my card. And I was like, I've never had this card. I don't know what it means. I really learn cards as I pull them because it puts it in context rather than trying to memorize a whole deck of 72 cards or 78 cards. So that happened, and I'm like, I don't get this. I'm not sure. Maybe this wasn't the card I was supposed to pull because I didn't pull it the way I normally pull it. So let me just take note of what that card is, and I'll try again, and we'll see. And what do you know? I pulled, after shuffling the deck, I didn't know which card it was. I put it back, shuffled the deck. I pulled my card the way I pull my card, and it was the same card. So I was like, and I knew, I was like, I know that this is the right one. The deck will tell me if this is what it meant to tell me. And it certainly did, and I was kind of shocked by that. And so I might have pulled this card in reverse. I don't know now that I think about it, because I needed to look at the card to read it. But you can see in the imagery that it's two children, and cups often, their cups are full of flowers and fruits of, like the buds of a tree or a plant, like the fruition, the fruits, the flowers, and the kind of growth. So their cups are full. I definitely felt like after that workshop, like I felt full of everything I ever needed. Like I walked out of there feeling great physically, mentally, emotionally, and at the same time, I was tapping into my own like deepest wounds of like, do I belong with these people? Like, am I accepted? And I feel like there is acceptance and there is sharing in this card. And some people, if you read, the Rider-Waite interpretation of this card, is that, or a lot of people interpret this card as it's time to grow up. It's time to no longer be a child. And I don't understand that reading exactly. I mean, it appears like these people are enjoying each other. They're enjoying life. And I think that if I pulled it in reverse, it's just a warning not to thwart that enjoyment. When it's there, enjoy it. Blossoms are fleeting. They bloom and they die. And so while they're there, share them with people. Fill each other up. Be loving. Be sharing. And I think when I read the original interpretation of grow up, I thought of that as like saying like, I honestly didn't get it. So, tarot it's an esoteric practice, but it really can mean almost what you want it to. And that's the danger in it, because you can reject, like if the tarot is sharing a card with you that you don't like, you could just reject it, but it's not going to offer you everything it can if you listen to what it's saying. So when I pulled this, at first I didn't want to listen to what it was saying because, what some, person who I don't know anything about them. So I'm going to listen to like myself and other voices on what the imagery in this card could represent. And I'm going to take it all with a grain of salt and just move on. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just tapping into intuition. So anyway, there's that. That's all I have to share. I have a finished object. I bought stuff. Not too exciting. But I am starting my new sweater. Look, I have like half a sleeve almost. So this is knitting up really fast. I know I haven't said this already, but this is Jamieson and Smith 2-ply jumper weight yarn. And I've tried on a lot of sweaters at the thrift store that feel like they were made with fiber like this, but I've never owned a Shetland wool garment. So this is going to be my first, well, that's not true. I mean, I have my Shetland underwing mitts, which are knit with this and some handspun Shetland. But other than that, I don't have any Shetland wool sweaters. So I'm just excited to see how this pans out. Thank you so much for joining me today, and if you are still watching the end of this video, thanks for making it to the end. If you enjoy this podcast, please like this video, give it a thumbs up so that it can reach other people on YouTube. Subscribe if you're interested in watching more episodes. And I just want to thank you all for being here and joining me and helping me face my fear of social interaction or something. I don't know. We'll see. It's a lifetime practice of confronting our deepest selves. So, thanks again, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.